So welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, and this is your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today we're talking about automation and innovation in the hemp and cannabis industry. We are here live at the World Trade Center. I'm here with Arnar and Denny. They're with Greenvault Systems. I'm here with Jason of 420 Wholesale Pack, and then there's Andy of Poseidon Asset Management.
Andy, let's start with you. I'm seeing some top investments being like cooperative packaging solutions, mobile processing, mobile pack houses, improved traceability technologies, farm to fork virtual marketplace, which sounds cool. There's mobile education centers and behavioral economics for agriculture. And so that's all just Main Street stuff. What's the most interesting thing you've seen in 2019? New, neat, niche, whatever's trending? Or how do you see the cannabis industry advancing?
Let me just start by saying, when it comes down to the science of cannabis and sort of these emerging technologies, I'm a total nerd. And so I actually, again, there's kind of two ways of looking at, disruption and innovation. There's sort of this marginal disruption that actually works really well in the cannabis industry because cannabis is already so disruptive and innovative. And then there's this completely brand new type of innovation that's rare, broadly speaking, and certainly therefore much rarer in a niche industry like cannabis. But cannabis is also very ripe for that because it's so unexperimented with. So I'll just start off by saying, we all know THC, we all know CBD, and but there's over 100 active cannabinoids in cannabis and potentially many more, as it seems we're constantly discovering more. And also, funnily, it seems like there's a confusion around which ones are real and which ones are made up. But story for another day. But so just THC, when that's metabolized, again, so once it's oxidized in the liver, it generally speaking becomes this kind of 11-hydroxy tetrahydrocannabinol, which is extraordinarily interesting. It's the high we get from edibles, generally speaking. It's water soluble, so it would circumvent all these issues we're currently experiencing with surfactants and emulsification and homogenization. So that's one really cool area. Just this idea of new novel cannabinoids. And what I think is really neat is this broader industry of cellular agriculture. So this is the idea of essentially, say, taking yeast or stem cells and growing them in vivo in bioreactors to produce particular outputs. So we have Ginkgo Bioworks partnered up with Kronos Group to pursue the idea of producing cannabinoids from bioengineered yeast. And for some reason, this gets the hype that this is going to bring down the cost of THC or CBD. I'm not really sure that's the case because you look at industrial hemp or you look at your cannabis sativa, we can already produce plants that yield 20 to 30% of this particular cannabinoid. So I'm not really sure that cellular agriculture will revolutionize those cannabinoids, but some of these lesser known cannabinoids and how those are metabolized and what the impacts are, especially this entourage effect. One of our founders, Emily, was actually recently on a trip. She was essentially due diligencing an opportunity and was speaking to a very, very intelligent scientist who kind of a few years ago pivoted and committed his life to cannabis. And he made a statement that I think is everyone really needs to understand, is that he said, we understand about 1% of this plant and its potential. Mm. And so I'm really excited for the way that's going. And again, just novel use of cannabinoids and their interactions. And I think another area, and I'll have to be careful how I word this as ultimately it is an investment. And so I need to be cognizant of that. I'll just say broadly speaking, we have a few ways of ingesting cannabis. We can smoke it, which we know there's risks to that, just like smoking anything. There's vaping, which I think is increasingly getting scrutiny that, it's still not great for you. And actually to take a viscous oil and turn it into an aerosol still requires heating it anywhere from 400 to 800 degrees. That creates formaldehyde, other noxious compounds. Then we can consume cannabis orally and ingest it. And then there's these patches and some of these other form factors. We're currently invested in a completely novel form factor, something that has never existed in any other space. At least not in this particular variation. And so I'm really excited to see how cannabis will actually drive the complete revolution of how we take drugs and broadly speaking interact with them and view things like microdosing. I can tell you before moving out west and kind of joining the industry here in California, the notion of microdosing was completely foreign. And the idea of using cannabis but not actually getting high. But it turns out that's probably the best way to use it, and, in terms of lifestyle and wellness and a lot of these other verticals. So, I'll just kind of summarize this with a few key statements. There is a lot of R&D being thrown into cannabis, and I think the outcomes of it are going to be revolutionary. I think the way that we consume and ingest cannabis in literally just 1 to 5 years time will make this kind of joints and THC CBD conversation seem juvenile. And I also really want to emphasize that the hype that CBD is getting today, which is literally the market's on fire. Again, I was just in New York, and it's everywhere you go. There's CBD coffee, there's CBD this, there's CBD that. Again, that's just one cannabinoid. There are a variety of cannabinoids in cannabis, and they all have very unique effects. And doing CBD alone, I would agree there are benefits to it, but I think that there's a lot of hype around it. And I think it will be 1 to 5 years until we really get the research to understand the formulations, whether it be a combination of CBD and THC, which I think we're all aware of is far more advantageous to CBD alone in isolate. I think those new form factors variations will be pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
I love it. Thank you, Randy. Any of you guys got anything that you have seen that's new, neat, or niche, something that's trending that you've seen in 2019 that you want to share?
I don't know. Maybe Andy's heard a little more about this, or I don't know if you have heard about this story. But there is, I guess, one of the beverage companies that's partnered with one of the large Canadian players. And the story that I read a while ago was that they were actually going to try to essentially create a cannabinoid-based drink that would have the same onset and offset of an alcoholic beverage. And that's one of the big concerns with edibles, obviously, is knowing when it's going to hit me and how long it's going to last. Right. And so if that's actually happening right now, and if that's one of those big R&D projects these big players are working on, I mean, that to me is an obvious game changer. The second you can give somebody a non-hangover related beverage that responds similar to alcohol without the negative side effects.
If I could pile on to that, so I actually have a theory. So again, historically, people have been essentially taking delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, the active ingredient in cannabis, and they've been applying different surfactants to basically make it emulsified in water. That's great, but then you do get this issue of the surfactant has to dissolve until that delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol hits your system. And then you have this long cannabis cycle where you have the delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, which goes through your system. Every, I think it's like 30 minutes, you have, a certain fraction of your blood actually passes through the liver. And so you start getting this trade-off from delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol to this 11-hydroxy, tetrahydrocannabinol, and then further to, COOH tetrahydrocannabinol, which is non-psychoactive and actually serves to, reduce the psychoactive effects of, the former two metabolites. So I have a theory that some people are finally beginning to crack this code, which is actually to follow that chain down and start with 11-hydroxy tetrahydrocannabinol, which has a shorter effect since it's already as if it's been pre-metabolized in your system, which would only take 1 to 3 hours for your typical person. So they're able to achieve a shorter half-life, again, closer to alcohol, kind of 1 drink, 1 hour is sort of the equation there. And I think we're getting kind of this marginal change to surfactant technology. And I love to kind of pick people's brains in this because almost all surfactant technology out there, and this emulsification and hydrosonic, emulsification, this technology from the 80s. And if you go on, ScienceDirect.com, for example, this is very old technology. It's very rudimentary and it doesn't work very well. But because of cannabis and the nuances of cannabis and the profit to be made in cannabis, scientists and engineers all over the world are reopening their these conversations around this technology. And I've yet to see anything that's truly blown me away yet, but I think the potential for the science is there. And hopefully we got something like that very soon. I can't wait.
That's awesome. I really appreciate, at any podcast where you can nerd out on, this is the place to be. So appreciate that.
Good deal.
CPA gave me a scientific view. That's awesome. Anything you guys want to add to that? Awesome. Andy, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Andy with Poseidon Asset Management. I appreciate you being on the podcast. There's Arnar and Denny with Green Vault Systems. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. We have Jason Lammers with 420 Wholesale Pack. Thanks again. And with that, I really appreciate you all being here with me today. So with that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is your Cannabis Business Podcast, The Talking Hedge. Like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.